He said, you're only as good as what you do when no one's looking.
Being in fear was actually this higher frequency. And in the dream, it showed me that actually pulls you into something more.
Krishna came behind the stage and he was like, don't worry about it, I've got you.
Floating presence came towards me, and it was this absolutely beautiful woman.
But while we were doing the Kriya, to my right side was a small Jesus.
Oh, okay.
I know. Welcome to the Life is But a Dream podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Liv Toepfer.
And I'm Becky Dreps.
And today we're here to talk to you about dreams of guides, teachers, gurus, or maybe even ascended masters, or your everyday Joe that's coming to teach you something. These dreams are ones where a presence, a figure, or a person of authority, or a teacher that's maybe perhaps really well known and recognizable shows up into your dreams with just a little bit more wisdom, a little more love, or just this massive amount of essence and energy that invokes clarity, memory, a feeling inside, or a thread that you can pull through into your everyday life. So I'm excited to talk to you today about our dreams, where we've had opportunities to learn and grow and evolve with dream teachers.
You know, dreams in and of themselves, obviously, are teachers. But when we have specific teachers come through, and teachers can be lots of different types of things. You know, sometimes it may be as something as simple as an animal or a symbol that reoccurs or something that you recognize. But then they also can be these actual recognizable teachers, people that you know from spiritual texts, or teachers that you study and you work with in the everyday space, or if you're learning about a new topic from a specific teacher and then they show up in the dream. And these don't have to be particularly special, or you have to exactly call these people in, but they show up. But the real important part of this is that it's giving you something, a piece of information, helping you understand something that maybe is tricky to understand. And so they play this role of guide, of allowing you to more deeply integrate something, whether you have an awareness to it or they're creating an awareness to it. And so let's start first with some of your teacher dreams, because I know you've had quite a few this week.
Yeah, I think I always pay attention to my dreams, but this week in particular, being in between eclipses, I've been so curious about what would come up this week. And for me in particular, I actually had 3 teacher dreams this week. And it's interesting because I think that energy is having me, these were some bigger teachers in my life, but I think they're almost a review of people that I've studied under or paid attention to along my journey. The first dream earlier this week was one of my very first teachers on my spiritual path. So she was, her name is Julie Pyatt, and she was one of the first teachers that I started taking her classes online and doing meditations with. And I was part of her membership program called Water Tiger, and I just really learned a lot from her about prayer in particular. And in this dream, I was in her house, and she's kind of a well-known figure. She's from Los Angeles and isn't necessarily, like a guru or something, but she's a well-known figure. And I never knew her personally, but in the dream, I was in her house. And so I was sitting in a circle of women, and we were all working with these tarot cards that were beautiful. They were actually big circular discs. They were plum and gold, and I really actually kind of want to make them.
Fun.
But there was this element of being in her house, but almost more like in her inner circle. Instead of being a student out, learning from her, I was like part of her inner circle, which I thought was an interesting perspective in this moment, particularly with the rest of the dreams that followed this week. But there was this reverence of remembrance of how much I learned from her, like this gratitude. And I had that awareness in the dream of like, oh, wow, I've come a long way since I first started, learning from her. And here I was kind of as a teacher within this circle within her house. So I felt like that was a beautiful reflection just on my own journey of this fondness for that newness when you're a new teacher, a new student. and are opening your world to other ways of study and meditation and prayer. So she just had this really interesting reflection on my own path for me this week.
Yeah, it's almost like she was this guide when you were in this neophyte stage, and now you've had pretty big graduation moment in the last few months of graduating out of this original form of teacher and almost like elevating in, and it's like you're being welcomed into this, you know, on the other realm side community that
I think I've had a lot of questions come up just around my own identity and even this lack thereof, like, how we keep talking about my land being gone, but this, who am I? So I felt like she came in almost as an opportunity for me to reflect.
Yeah, to pull you back
on my own journey.
Yeah, where you are.
Yeah.
That's such a fun one.
There were two more that were more this week in particular. I was like, wow, this week is like a hot topic for teachers kind of a week. But one of them was this interesting, I was in a market. It was like a grocery store. And initially in the beginning part of the dream, I was in the driver's seat of a car. The door was open and I was waiting, and I felt exhausted and tired of waiting for this guy to load my car up with groceries. And I leaned out and told him he had taken 4.5 hours of loading this nourishment into my car. And I remember feeling just so exhausted, drained, waiting. And then the dream cuts to me now switching from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, but eating a juicy peach and driving through this market. And it was like I had been waiting for this nourishment. And now I was in more of a receptive seat and receiving the nourishment, eating this juicy peach. But I threw it out the window into a pile of fruits and vegetables in the market. And I remember thinking, I had this thought of like, oh, it'll just fall in there and no one will see it. And lo and behold, Sadhguru was in the pile of vegetables. He was like standing there, the one setting up the pile of vegetables. And he was kind of disguised in a, white like market coat and a chef's hat. He was kind of disguised as an employee of the grocery store, doing humble work, setting up the vegetables for other, setting up the nourishment for others. And he caught me throwing the peach seed and locked eyes with me. And he went, like, gave me this no, no, no. And then I couldn't hear him, but he telepathically sent me a message and said, let me see if I get this right. He said, you're only as good as what you do when no one's looking. And I took that like, wow, that was a profound reminder of integrity is both when you're not, having a studio and leading and guiding and this identity, but also what you're just doing at home in your own regular everyday practice. And who are you when no one's looking? Mm. So I thought that was a beautiful message to wake up with as just a reminder for any of us to check our integrity and make sure that we're not operating in performance and that we're really being authentic. And it also made me just check in with my own practices this week. And if I'm teaching meditation, am I doing my meditations? And just made me kind of reflect on my own journey.
Yeah, that is a really profound one. And also really cool that it was a telepathic message. It wasn't verbal, it just appeared. And what is Sadhguru, what does he mean to you?
Don't take it as like Sadhguru visited me in my dream, but he was definitely one of my teachers on my path over the last 10 years. He is considered a guru and is a teacher, Hindu teacher. And he's kind of like this cool modern teacher. He's a guru that definitely wears, his outfits and his turbans, but he also rides a motorcycle and wears cool sunglasses. And he's very famous. He's very well known, but he's a more modern day guru that's always teaching, oneness and meditations and various types of practices around, embodiment and coming to your wholeness. And so I've always thought he has the sweetest eyes, and his energy I've always really resonated with. He feels like a teacher I trust and have studied under just, online. I've never met him in person or anything. And so seeing him in the dream was just another like teacher on my path showing up. And I don't even know, when I felt the telepathic message, I heard his voice, but it was also like this remembrance within myself, recognizing the message. It was almost like I knew what he was going to say and he said it. It almost felt simultaneous, like, man, I'm not the kind of person that would just huck a peach seed into the pile. So I don't know. It was just, I really liked Sadhguru along my path.
Yeah, I like that one. Okay, so you had one more, right?
I did this week in particular. It's been a busy week. So this one, I was in a hotel room with a group of women, and it felt like I was on a retreat. It felt like we were in Malta. And so that was interesting in and of itself, almost like this preview of where we're going later in June next year. I've had several dreams about being in Malta already. But this one, one of the girls in the dream was wanting to set up this area on the balcony of the hotel for prayers. And I thought that was really beautiful and I was excited about it. And I happened to say, well, it is Easter. And I know this Kundalini Kriya that's really good to connect with Christ consciousness. And everybody was like, yay, okay, let's do that one. And all of a sudden, as we were doing the Kriya in the dream, which I've been trying to actually sit and meditate and recall what this Kriya is, because now I want to do it. But while we were doing the Kriya, to my right side was a small Jesus.
Oh, okay.
I know. And but initially I felt his presence as the energy of wind. For some reason, that was like how I was describing it in my dream. Was there was a really large presence that took over the room that felt like the energy of wind. But then I noticed there was this Jesus like hovering right next to me and all this energy kind of coming around me. And eventually, like through the Kriya, I all of a sudden had all this energy moving through me. And I remember looking down at my feet and seeing like sparks of really white lightning like energy coming out of my toes. And I had this other like telepathic message come through that I had received the energy of lightning. And I don't know what that means. And I don't know that I've ever had, that I can recall right away, a dream of Jesus. Mm-hmm. He's definitely been a teacher on my path. So another teacher on the path this week. And, you know, some dreams like these that feel big, like you could get like, oh, I had a dream about Jesus. Jesus visited me. But again, I think I look to it as like, what does Jesus represent to me? And he's somebody that represents, you know, again, like holding authenticity and love and devotion and kindness and just this essence of purity in his own teachings and practices. And I have no idea what the lightning aspect means, other than I had this remembrance when I woke up of everything I need is within me, and that whatever it is I'm seeking outside of myself to be awakened, or whatever it is I feel like I'm waiting for to awaken even more, is just not necessary. Like it exists within already. That was kind of this feeling I had when I woke up anyways.
I like that you don't know exactly what it means, or you're trying to figure out the Kriya and there's something more to it. This week I had a dream and it had a bunny in it, and bunnies and rabbits can mean all types of different things in dreams. But in this one, the bunny was, I think it was scared or something, but it was trying to get into a pocket, like a big cargo jean pocket. And it kept burrowing down, and I kept trying to pull this little brown bunny out, and it didn't want to come out. And it felt like this reminder to me that sometimes certain things, when they come to you in dreams, if they're not known, it's okay for them to be unknown. Or in this one, you know, bunnies naturally burrow, so this was doing its natural thing, and to let it be natural, even, you know, they're vulnerable, so wanting it to be protected and allowing it to show up just as it is instead of trying to like extract something out of it. And also this part about not knowing what the lightning could mean, and that, you know, maybe that'll come later, and maybe you'll get another guide who will come in and help you understand what the lightning could be.
Yeah, I love that you bring up memory just in general, because I think so much of our journey as humans is about remembrance. Whether we're awake or asleep, we are here to remember our divinity. We're here to remember this eternal soul aspect of ourselves. And that's where I find dreams to be so beautiful, because when we do shut down the human body and we go into our dreamland, it is our soul essence that we're working with. which is why I think it's so fun that our soul is so vast that it is able to, I think, connect with these fields of energy that might be an ascended master like Jesus, or a current, master on the earth, a guru like Sadhguru, or teachers like Julie Pyatt, or cute teachers like animals. I mean, we can do a whole episode on animals alone, which we should. But I think that's where the dreaming part is so beautiful, because I think it is this work on a soul level that is trying to help us remember. And if our job is to remember and call forth more of our soul to be embodied in this human body and this human experience, it is opportunities to reflect on, like, I actually am lightning, you're lightning, we're all also lightning. Like, we are this oneness of all of creation, just expressing as these various fractals of ourselves. And I think dreams invite us to remember all these multidimensional layers of ourselves and these fields that we're connected to, that, Jesus is not someone above us or far away from us. It's a resonance that we can connect with in our field and learn from, even if we've never met any of these teachers in person. I know I've had, I don't know, dozens of dreams about Matthias de Stefano, because I do consider him to be my highest teacher in this lifetime. And I've learned the most from him. And his teachings and his resonance to me are an embodied ascended master. And so, again, I think we often put these people up on pedestals too much, because they represent such a purity that all of us other humans that kind of just don't maybe feel like we have this remembrance. Like, Matthias is a great person that's all about remembering. I mean, he remembers his past lives, and he's remembering so many teachings from multi dimensions and lifetimes that he's teaching here. So I think of him as the rememberer. Mm-hmm. Now that we come into the topic of remembering and just kind of using dreams to remember.
Yeah.
Through all these teachers.
And we've both have had him show up in different ways in different dreams, because he's someone that we both have been intrigued by and follow the messages that he pulls through. But you've had some interesting ones, I think, specifically with him, right?
Yeah, I've had several. And there's a couple that come to mind. There was one when I was leading the retreat that we did last year in Taos, New Mexico, where in all of my dreams with him, I do always have this deep devotional love for him, and not in a romantic way, but this like divine way. Like, I really hold him in such a special place. But I remember talking to him and telling him a story in this dream, and I felt like he wasn't listening to me. He appeared to be distracted, and I called him out on it and said, Matthias, you're not listening to me. And he said, no, I am, but I'm listening to a thread of you from 1,000 years ago. And your name was Yeti. And we knew each other in the Kafir temple in Egypt. And again, I'm not trying to take that information as like, oh, Matthias visits me in my dreams, and he said, in no way do I think that, but I do feel like that it is this teacher that represents memory to me, if we were to even just boil him down to memory. And maybe my dream or my soul is inviting me to remember an aspect of a previous lifetime, perhaps in Egypt, where I was Yeti. And there was a weird resonance when I woke up. I woke up repeating the name Yeti, as if some part of me didn't want to forget that name. And it was spelled Yethi. And I remember looking it up at the time and seeing what it means, but I don't recall it now. But there was a resonance to it where it felt familiar in some weird way. And then there was another one, which actually I think I've told you about, but it brought another one with Matthias, where I had a series of 7 dreams, and he was just in the first one that kind of activated this series of 7 dreams about a set of spinal activations that I received. And in the first one, I actually physically, in my real life, had pain in my mid-thoracic spine all the time. I'm going to a chiropractor for it. So on one hand, it could just be my spine talking to me through dreams. But on the other hand, it was showing up in my dreams as I was with Matthias, and he was downloading music codes into my spine. And I was telling him in the dream that it kind of hurt. And he said, that's okay. That's just part of the integration. Just breathe and relax your body and allow these codes to come in, but they look like musical notes going into my spine. And the next dreams I had after that, there were 6 of them all kind of in a row or within a month. He wasn't in them anymore, but it was other activations happening with the spine. And there was one where I was hugging a friend of mine and I had my fingers kind of in each one of her spines as if I was playing a musical instrument like a flute. And I had all this golden energy coming out of my hands and into her spine. And I had become the teacher, almost like passing forth these music codes. And it was coming out like a musical instrument through my fingers to her spine. And I had, again, like these series of 7 dreams. I don't have to go through all of them, but each one of them had an element of some sort of receiving and then giving and then receiving and then giving, all through the spine. And they were all some sort of code and activation happening that ultimately ended with an activation of the higher heart chakra, which I was really into those dreams at the time. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Have you tried any of those codes with, or like, was it something you could actually bring into the physical plane?
It was interesting that you say that because right at a week after that last dream that I had, we actually held a ceremony in my yurt for one of the full moons. And my friend Christina had actually come and we were doing this CE5 meditation to call in some galactic beings at the end of the night. Were you there?
Yeah.
And she did the conch shell and came around and she asked me, do you mind if I do some spinal activations on each person? I feel like that's going to help the energy flow to call in the galactics. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so weird that you said that. I've had these dreams. And she said she had a dream and had some Pleiadian guides come through that directed her to do these spinal activations. And she had said that there was something Pleiadian related to me in that sense that had to do with the spine. And she wasn't going to even tell me that because she thought it was weird. And then we had this collaboration essentially on all the spinal stuff come up. So I haven't necessarily taught anything, but we did right away experience this spinal activation in real life where Christina came around and did that. And the pain in my spine cleared completely, instantly when her hand was on my back.
Wow.
Whatever had felt blocked and congested in my spine for a month at least completely melted away and remained gone. So I don't know. I mean, I just found that extraordinary because of the timing of the dreams and then what was coming through for her and her dreams and her wanting to bring that thread into real life. And it happened to be with me and had something to do with me. And I definitely feel very connected to Pleiadians as well. So I thought it was neat that she didn't know that. So dreams can be very neat.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's super fascinating. But also you did spinal activations in Guatemala too.
I did. Yeah, you're right. I have. I haven't, I guess, taught it in a sense of like teaching others how to
do it. Yeah.
But I've definitely been playing with it because I do have an energy that will come forth into my hands when I go into ceremony like that.
Yeah.
What I have taught, I think, from that is I did go into a deep dive on the study of the higher heart chakra, which I teach all the time about the 3 hearts, where we have our biological physical heart, and then we have the anahata chakra, the heart chakra, and then we have the hridaya, which is known as the spiritual heart or the high heart. And to me, the way I saw it in my dream, I saw them in these layers of energy, kind of like a toroidal field of energy that kept expanding out. And this higher heart is the seat of the soul. So I saw that as like where the divine spark of energy lands within us and then starts to pulse and activate our body and our energy force field. And so I've taught that before and about the hridaya and how to connect with it and various meditations for it and mudras for it. And I really resonated with seeing those 3 layers come together. For some reason, that just felt so it was so beautiful in my dream. And I know our spine is like, it keeps us upright. And I think of it as there is an energy channel that moves from above our head and all the way down the spine and through the feet. And around the spine itself, you call it the Sushumna, the energy channel that receives this flow of creator energy. But then the Antakarana is what goes all the way into the cosmos and through the core of the earth. And it's kind of like our our entire life force moves through that. And I think of that as the codes of the cosmos come through that channel. So I have taught that stuff, but it was, I guess, initially sparked from these dreams, but
yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's cool that, you know, when you're given something in a dream and then you're able to not have a lot of information about it and then take it in and study and understand, and it kind of sends you down, like, you know, I talked about bunnies from rabbit holes, you know, so that's why the bunny's here, I guess. So it can take you down these rabbit holes just to help you understand, but it also keeps you in that space and energy of curiosity, and that is a really open energy where, you know, when you get something in a dream that opens this curiosity, and then you're able to dive in and stay in that field of like deep openness and interest with not an expectation of, I need to study, I need to learn this, I need to know how to do this, because it already came in a way. So there's just a curiosity of, oh, there's a remembering, I know how to do this. And that can be a really fun thing.
I think that's why I thought it was fun to share about ascended masters and gurus and big name teachers like that show up in our dreams. And not in a sense that anybody that gets those type of visitations is special, but because it's a recognizable person that has a lot of fame, if you will, it inspires you in a different way than just a regular dream of regular people. Or if regular people in your dream teach you really big teachings, I just think it inspires you in a way to want to bring it all the way through into your everyday life. That it is something that more, it feels like something more that's beyond the average dream.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say an everyday person, because this week I actually had, and I love that you're talking about the higher heart and everything too, because I do breath work every morning, and that's one of the things. I'm an Aquarius moon, so it's very grounding and very helpful for me to get out of my, you know, airy mind. And I was in this dream, I think I was doing some sort of breath work. I was trying some sort of breath work that was new. And I had this male teacher who I didn't know, I didn't recognize. And I honestly couldn't even see, but was giving me information. And he was talking about the connection between the solar plexus and the heart. And he said that there's a shape in between them of how these two connect together. And I kept trying to like see the shape, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it with my regular eyes. And I think that was almost part of the point, was that it's not something that you can see. And part of me was so interested in the higher chakras. And I was talking to this guide, and I was like, yeah, the solar plexus, whatever. But like, I want to talk about up here. And he kind of almost like laughed at me and was like you can't get up here till you get through here. And so it's interesting that you're talking about the heart as the gateway. And I feel like he was saying that to me, that, you know, you have to connect these two pieces in order for this to all work together. So then I move away from being interested in the higher chakras, and I'm like, okay, so start to explain this to me. And that's when he starts to go into this part about the shape, and I'm trying to figure out the shape, and he almost pulls me back and is like, you can't see it, you have to feel it. You have to be with it and like soften into it and allow that connection to happen. And there was a part of me that was still a little annoyed because I wanted to see it.
It's such a dream guide thing to say, the feeling, because dreams are all about the feeling aspect.
Yeah, and he did a good job of bringing me back in, but I still didn't have similar to how you said, like you couldn't remember the Kriya in the Jesus Yeshua dream, and that was the same thing here. Like, I don't remember the breath work or the breath pattern or what it was that to make that connection, but I know that that's a connection that I need to continue to work with.
And it's interesting that you say that. I was just reflecting on it being, well, today's Virgo now, but your nodal return being in this Leo Aquarius axis, and you were doing this breath work because you're an Aquarian moon, and then Leo representing the solar plexus and the heart. So maybe that's part of your karmic integration that you're learning.
Yeah, I do think it is. And even when I've been doing breath work lately, it's funny that the couple of different patterns I've been choosing bring me into my heart in a big way. Like, I can really feel it beating and moving. And there's part of me that's like, oh, I'm so grateful I can feel you. I can be with you, you know? And so that's been a
Aw,
fun,
that's beautiful.
fun little breath work exercise.
And when you were talking about, I kept seeing a Merkaba for some reason, a Merkaba shape, which is like, the inverted pyramid and the regular pyramid. They spin in different directions, one representing masculine, the other one feminine. But I was thinking about when you're, this is a Matthias teaching, but when you're, one of the pyramids represents love, wisdom, and will, and your solar plexus being will and heart being love. And then you're trying to get up to the higher realms, which is this wisdom aspect. And then the other one is energy, vibration, and frequency. And that's the lower part of us that is feeling and bringing and flowing all this energy through us. And together, you're supposed to integrate those 6 points of focus, if you will, and then allow the Merkaba to spin to activate your whole like energy field. But it begins in the heart. So you sit here and envision these two triangles.
Space.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that you talked about integration when you were talking about the higher heart one, because I've definitely in this nodal return been having a lot of there is a lot of integration going on. I'm feeling it in my dreams. I'm seeing it in my life. I'm even going through experiences in my 3D world that are very reminiscent of things I've already been through, but I feel like I'm going through them in a new energy, and I'm able to have a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more mastery with working with some of these. But the integration of, you made the comment around how in your one dream, Matthias said that it hurt. It's okay that it hurts right now. And I think about when we go through something where we are integrating something new, and there is just this like natural discomfort, or there's this pain, and there's sometimes this desire to like get away from that and not just be present with something that's really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has also been, as I've been moving through some of this, like allowing myself to rest in the discomfort, or there's a familiarity. I've done this before, and this is going to be uncomfortable, and okay to be in that discomfort, and allowing that to not trying to push against it, but just remember that, later on there's going to be a spinal activation that's going to go away. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I think that's a lot of what the collective is moving through right now in general. I mean, I hear it in every circle we hold, and I hear it through other friends and family, and people talking about even on podcasts, that I think the collective very much so is learning how to move through uncertainty, and this element of us being comfortable with discomfort and where we're growing through that. But this need to slow down, there's like an integration, because I think we are about to take a quantum leap consciously. And it's like we need to integrate all and reflect on how far we've come, because I think many of us have grown in a lot of ways. It's been challenging, to say the least, for I think everyone since 2020, since pandemic era, where we've had to grow and change in many ways. And I think a lot of that is part of our evolution, and we're in a time of accelerated evolution right now. And I think there's many things coming up, whether in our waking lives or in our dreaming lives, trying to invite us to slow down and to reflect how much we've been through, how much we've grown, all the wisdom we have within us, and to be okay in this uncertainty right now, because we're about to take a big quantum leap forward. And so I think there's this readiness happening, and it's almost like if we don't recall who it is we are truly in our most authentic version, where we are in integrity, where we're out of alignment or out of resonance with old things or jobs or people or relationships, to make new. I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of clearing out and purging, especially during an eclipse portal, which we're in right now. I think a lot of these things, my dreams this week have reflected, remember these teachings along your path. Like, it took me all the way back to 10, 12 years ago when I first began this spiritual awakening path, and this fondness of like all that I've been through, when certain times felt hard, or I didn't know, or I thought I would never understand certain things. Or I remember when I thought I would never be able to meditate. I was like, yeah, there's no way. It was painful to meditate.
No, meditation is so painful when you start. And I don't think I say that in classes when I teach it, but I don't think people understand that when you decide that you're going to sit down and meditate, people think that, oh, I'm going to immediately feel better. No, that is not the case. You don't feel better.
It's about the staying power. Like, showing up.
Keep showing up when it's very, very uncomfortable. And it is very, very uncomfortable. Like learning to feel emotions that you have just been kind of containing. Like I remember the first time I leaned into feeling anxiety and actually letting, instead of, anxiety is like one of those emotions that I feel like you feel it and it's so intense that you push it away or you cover it with something and you hold it almost in like a bubble, but then it takes up space inside your body and then it continues and continues to grow over time. And if you don't let it be felt, it will take over. And I remember being in a meditation, I was going through it's very interesting because I talk about being an integration and reminiscent of other times. Well, was going through a hard work period and I could feel the tension and the anxiety building. And I remember laying in bed and being like, okay, I'm going to let myself feel all of this. And it was it was like pins and needles through my entire system and my entire body. And it was so intense. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is what this actually feels like. And once I let myself feel it and was in that pins and needles, just horrible feeling, it went out through my skin and out and just continued out. And then there was a dissipation, but the amount of time that I had to sit in it was so uncomfortable and so just, it was so uncomfortable. And also I had to agree to sit and to say, okay, I am going to feel this. I am going to be with this.
And that's the conscious awareness. That's the part of it that makes it work, that allows it to dissipate the energy, is bringing in the conscious awareness. Because if we feel too uncomfortable and we can't sit in our meditation practice, it's our mind not wanting to sit and be aware. And I remember when I've taught this in every meditation training I've led or yoga teacher training I've led, that for me, when I was first learning to meditate and sit there, the best way to describe it was I felt like a prisoner in my own body. Like I felt held captive. It was literally physically painful in my body. It hurt my spine. My legs would fall asleep. And I had always been a type A busybody, busy at all times. I had been an event producer when I had first started training in meditation. And I was so used to being high octane levels and busy. I'd never sat still a day in my life. And so to sit there was painful, physically and mentally, emotionally, all of it. But I am always very disciplined. And so I just kept showing up. I'm like, I just have to do this, But I never thought it would change. And I remember when I finally relaxed the mind, like you said, and allow, like, okay, today I'm just going to allow whatever happens, however I feel, to just be, instead of judging it, instead of, hating being in it. I'm just going to allow it to be. And that was the first time I was able to sit the whole 20 minutes. It felt like 5. My body didn't hurt. I didn't scream. I didn't want to run for like the first time. And it was just like something opened in me that was new to allowing. I had never allowed. I'd kept myself closed off and contained and in order and disciplined and on the go and push it all down, all anxiety. Nope, we're not going to feel that. And yeah, like you said, like the emotions bubble up, and then it just became this, like, I craved meditation. I couldn't wait to see if I could sit again and just find that spaciousness that I felt for the first time in my life. And I think, like, coming back to the Sadhguru meditation about integrity, is I do teach meditation a lot, and I have not been able to meditate lately through this entire journey of identity questioning and all this stuff going on, with closing the land and everything. And I've had a really hard time sitting, but I've been choosing to meditate just kind of always. Like, what is it like if I am trying to always just be in awareness with whatever is arising, rather than feeling the need to sit? Like treating, going to bed at night, preparing for dream worlds. That's a ritual meditation practice in and of itself. Walking, hiking, grocery store, whatever it is I'm doing, I'm trying to just be in awareness of what is arising. So if that means anxiety is arising in the moment, or I can notice that my mind is busy, or I have a lot of questions or fear, or I've just been trying to make myself be in constant awareness as my practice, because it has been really hard for me to sit down and meditate. And so that's where I just wanted to come clean, because that's where I feel like I'm out of integrity right now. But I do miss it. And I do love, like, when I go to my yoga classes and can sit and I feel just the spaciousness arrive again. So having, little moments here and there, but
yeah. And I think that one of the things, at least for me, I've mentioned this lately, but I went through a pretty intense time last year, and went through a big breakup and had some other stuff happen in my life that just flipped my world upside down. And I'd also transitioned to being in a partnership to being alone a lot. And one of the things that just became like my temperature was to sit outside every morning, even if it was cold or super hot or whatever the temperature outside was. I would sit on my back porch and I would just sit there and be in my meditation. And that was one of the things that I think previous I would meditate in bed, or I would sit in my little yoga room, or I would do it, but giving myself this like consistent spot to show up every single time. And then I got to watch the fluctuations of like, oh, this is what's happening in my waking life. And this is like, I would set out just, 15 minutes of like, this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes I would make it 15 minutes and sometimes it would be 7, and sometimes it was 25, and it just all depended. And it was also an interesting thing to, when I would have those moments of like that complete release, and that I call them bliss body meditations, when like something just shifts and you feel that spaciousness. I would have those, but it was a good reminder, and I could never be attached, because I could never make them happen like multiple days in a row. It would just be like, oh, it's here today, enjoy it today. And then also on those days when I couldn't sit long enough and I did have a lot and the mind was really busy, and it was also a reminder and acceptance of those moments too, and allowing myself to have that, that temperature check. And yes, it was an external temperature check because I would sit outside, but it was also an internal temperature check of like what was going on with me every single day. And that has actually brought me in to being able to practice what you mentioned around that level of awareness in everything that I'm doing. I can be sitting in a meeting presenting, and awareness to my cadence of speech, awareness to if people are actually listening to me. I was on a girls' trip last weekend, and my awareness when I would offer to help one of my friends, how she would very quickly reject the help. And at first I was like, oh, should I not have offered the help? And like I would kind of get into the space, and I was like, oh no, that's just her response to me. And I didn't, it didn't, what probably would have activated me years ago, I didn't let it activate me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's just noticing, I got to just see it. And I think that was one of those things that I feel like once you move through kind of almost those stages, you get to be in that deeper overall awareness.
I think it's actually a next level of meditation. Now that I think about it, just sitting here and hearing you reflect this, it really is the embodiment practice. Because I think when you first start meditating and it's challenging, but then you start to like it and you start to crave it, and then you just want to go sit and seek the bliss moment and to be in your peace and nobody bother me, and this is my meditation time and this is my zone. But when you start to do the temperature checks and bring it into your work meetings, and understanding the entire practice is about non-reactivity, right? So it isn't necessarily about sitting in bliss or comfort. And even though you can be more comfortable with practice, it is about upekkha. It is the deep okayness with reality as it is rising. So even in the meditation practice itself is, you watch thoughts that come and you don't attach to them. You just notice. So it is this practice of awareness. You notice what is fluctuating through your mind and through your body. And so I think even for us, the shift of like, okay, you know, I'm going to try it this way. And right now I'm trying to just have this awareness. You're bringing your awareness into meetings and it's being in body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like not trying to escape. So meditation is about being present in your body with whatever is arising. And so that embodiment aspect is being able to now move through life in this meditated state where you're just aware of what is happening and how it is affecting you and how your energy is affecting others. And so it might not be like my usual, oh, yay, it's me time and I'm connecting with spirit and I'm all blissed out. But it is that embodiment practice of being in a state of meditation or a state of awareness with reality.
This brings me back to a dream I had a few years ago where I was in a classroom and there was two teachers and there was I think it was a female teacher, which I kept calling primary teacher when I wrote this down. And then there was a male teacher. And I was a veteran student or like a TA or a teacher's assistant kind of a thing. So I was up at the front and I was helping the rest of this group. And they were teaching about emotions in the class and how all of these different emotions correlate to different frequencies, which there's actually real science that does that. But in our 3D world, the science is that, you know, there's like a spectrum of emotion and the body vibrates in like a different type of way. And in this dream, what it was telling me was that we sometimes think of fear, the spectrum of like fear to love. In the spectrum of fear to love, because we think about things sometimes in a very black and white way, we can think of fear as being bad or dark or something we want to get away from and that we want to move up this spectrum. But in the dream, they were kind of flipping that on its head. And that's not really how it works in general, in that essentially, obviously, all of the emotions are important, which is valid and true. But how this was showing was that actually this fear frequency, this, you know, being in fear was actually this higher frequency. And in the dream, it showed me that that actually pulls you into something more. And it was an interesting thing that flipped a current understanding of what I thought on its head. And it was all brought through, you know, two teachers, not well-known teachers, but the actual room of a classroom in teachers and teaching about emotions and knowing that, you know, the fear emotion was actually a really important one. And I think when we sit in those meditative states and we have to feel something that is so uncomfortable, we sometimes can think that this is bad or we shouldn't feel that way or we need to get away from that feeling. But one of the things that was a teacher in this dream was that there is a really high frequency in being able to feel the emotions that maybe we potentially want to run away from.
I think fear itself is that's a primal energy in it, especially for humans when we came from, you know, once upon a time before we had fire and it was scary and dangerous at night. You know, we've learned to fear the darkness. And same with, I know we've talked about this before, just in, you know, talking about polarity in this world that we live in is a polarity existence where you have both the dark and the light. And we've talked about how important that spectrum is, that you can't have one without the other. So I think it's interesting. Do you feel like that dream itself was teaching polarity or was just more about the lesson of integrating and needing both to have the understanding of both fear and the acceptance of it?
Well, I think it was both. It was that there is a polarity and there is these extremes. And I think sometimes we think of one as better than the other. And I think what it was teaching me and what these two teachers were showing is that you need both. And there is a, I don't want to use the word light, but there is a, you know, there is a beauty in both. There is a necessity in both.
The spectrum.
Yeah. And that you have to, if you want to feel the biggest amount of love, you also have to be able to feel deep, deep fear too. And I think allowing those to be held with the same amount of reverence.
Speaking of reverence and deep, deep love, I just recalled one of my dreams from, this was a couple years back, but I had another series of dreams. This was like 5 dreams of Krishna. So another ascended master teacher, but I didn't really, I mean, I'd never, you know, been devoted to Krishna or anything, but he kept appearing in dreams in multiple ways. There was like, I would open my refrigerator and it was full of Krishnas. I would open my cabinet and it was like Krishna all over the wallpaper. But I remember having this one dream, and I was in this big theater and I was backstage and I was about to go perform some dance, and the curtains were just about to open and I had forgotten everything. And I had that whole panic and fear about going out onto the stage and performing this dance and having no idea. I mean, I completely lost it and I was freaking out. And all of a sudden, Krishna, this young version, he was like super handsome, young version. And I absolutely knew it to be the young Krishna. And he was kind of a ladies' man. And if you don't know who Krishna is, he's a Hindu deity, and he's somebody I think that embodies Christ consciousness. He embodies that devotion to the creator, and has come down specifically as a deity, as an ascended master, to teach love and oneness. And Krishna in the Hindu tradition is seen in many ways. You can see him as Krishna the baby, where he's kind of like represents new life. You see him as blue a lot of times, which I think has a galactic quality to it. I'm not sure what the story is about that. But he also is the lover. Like Radha is his consort, his partner, and there's this like deep love, and there's a lot of pictures of him with ladies all around. But that was the version I saw in my dreams. But it was in no way romantic. It was just this divinity, this love. But Krishna came behind the stage and he was like, "Don't worry about it. I've got you." And the curtains open and we had to dance. And Krishna danced to me all over this stage. And I was able to fully surrender and trust and lean into his guidance. And again, it was this incredibly powerful experience of deep reverence, divine love. Like it felt like dancing with God, for what I could imagine it to be. And again, not in a romantic way, but this just, deep love. And he had me, he held me, he made it through the dance. I didn't remember anything, and I could just take his lead and go. And I thought it was so beautiful because I'd had these series of dreams where I'd already been curious, like, wow, I wonder why Krishna is showing up in my dreams. And then all the way to this surrender and trust in the final dream. But I think, have you had any dreams of like this next level, again, ascended master coming in, or some sort of deity, or even the Hindu god, or any kind of
Well, it's funny that we're
figure
in the Hindu space, because last year I had started reading and studying Durga, who is the divine feminine presence, and the breakup that I went through which really flipped my life on its head. It was already starting to break. And so my sleep was very disjointed, and I was having a really hard time sleeping and resting and just being with all of the emotions that were coming up in my system. And I was, crying myself to sleep one night, and I asked for the Great Mother to come through and to hold me, to be held. And it was 2 nights later, I had the most technicolor dream I have ever had in my entire life. And this floating presence came towards me, and it was this absolutely beautiful woman. And the reason that I feel like it was Durga is because when Durga is pictured, she often has 8 to 10, sometimes 12, sometimes 14 arms. And this female figure had all of these arms all up around her, and she was holding, some of it was the traditional things like a sword and a bow and arrow and a conch shell and some of the traditional things that Durga is shown. But then she also was holding like modern things. Like it was definitely a phone. I think there might've been a pan and some other like random like kitchen things that I was like, this is weird. But she came to me, and it was very majestic and psychedelic. Like it was like moving. There was all of these colors. The beauty was just, I just remember being almost like enraptured with how my dreams have color and I see scapes. But this made me feel like every dream I've ever had is in grayscale, because this was like another level. And little did I know that right after this, like, yes, the breakup was happening, but like there was about to be 5 or 6 other things in my life that were going to flip. And in hindsight, I can look back now on this dream and just be so grateful that I had this mother presence come to me. And I also think that one of the biggest things it taught me, now that I'm years past this, is, or a year and a half now past this, is it was awakening the mother in me, in needing to mother myself and take care of myself and know that I had all the arms with all the things, my phone, the pans, the bow and arrow, everything, all of the tools that I needed were there, and they were going to support me. And, very similar to what you said around Matea saying it's all within you. I don't think I knew this in the moment. And I definitely didn't know it in the few months and weeks after this dream and everything that, I went through, as I went through what I would call just a extreme ego death, deep collapse. Every part of self just fell apart. And it was such an important moment that I got to have an interaction like that. And it gave me so much joy in that moment. And I was glad I got to feel that extreme joy, because then afterwards I was going to go into, we talk about those extremes, to feel the elation of joy, to then go all the way down to like the tips of grief and sorrow and pain. And I think it was that reminder of that spectrum. And I have a lot of gratitude for
when
that
I
dream.
hear you describing Durga and all of her arms and what she's holding, I just kind of heard the words, all life is sacred. Even the grief that we move through and the challenges and the points of growth that our souls come down here to choose to move through, to grow in such big ways. And the Divine Mother's presence was so, I'm glad that you had that experience, knowing what you went through.
It was, as it makes me tear up and cry, but it was a really special moment that I have. Like I said, in that moment, I had a lot of gratitude for it. And now in hindsight, and how much I've grown and expanded and felt all of my different arms, I have a lot of gratitude that I was able to see that. And then, almost a year later, I got a tattoo on my back, on my spine. And one of my big reminders for my tattoo, because it has lots of symbols in it, is remember that you have everything you need within you.
And that's why I think, these dreams are so powerful. And sometimes to have these dreams that have ascended masters and teachers, and, I think all of these beings, whether they're mythological or real, of this time or 2,000 years ago, when we have dreams like these that invoke such beautiful feelings and gave you such strength to move through what you went through, all of these teachers have elements of purity and precision and discipline, which is a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today, and or hold, concepts of polarity or teachings about polarity. And just, they are figures that have come into our reality, both waking and dreaming, to teach us how to function as these eternal souls that are here having this embodied experience, and trying to give us some help along the way to move and grow. Like we always talk about, the soul comes here to grow. And so we're going to naturally go through identity crisis, ego deaths. And if we're doing the work and trying to participate in our lives consciously, dreams can be such powerful tools that can, even as we speak of them, bring tears to our eyes for the recognition that they've brought us, for the ways that we've grown, and having the hindsight to reflect how powerful of a tool that was to have Ma Durga come and lead the way. And sometimes we have no idea what journey we're about to embark on. But I personally have loved sharing these dreams and talking about all these teachers that have been part of our journeys along the way. And we would love to hear if you've ever had a dream about even receiving teachings, whether it was from an ordinary person on the streets, an animal, or an ascended master, an angel, or a teacher on your own path. We would love to hear about your dreams and how those dreams have helped you grow along your journey. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Wonderful. And remember, life is but a dream.